Hey, it's noon, so I think we can get started. I'm going to stop my share. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Monica Driggers. I'm the Deputy Director for the Massachusetts Rivers Alliance. It's Wednesday, April 3rd, 2024. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the Dam Busters 101 series, a collaboration between Mass Rivers, the Charles River Watershed Association, and the Massachusetts Division of Ecological Restoration. This educational series offers basic information about dam removal to managers for municipalities and nonprofits that may be considering such projects in the future. Please note that the series is not intended to advocate for the removal of any specific dam or dams. Today's presentation is the sixth in our 11-part series on different dam removal topics. For the series topics and an exact schedule, please visit the Mass Rivers Alliance website at www.massriversalliance.org. Today's webinar is on addressing infrastructure. Our next webinar will be about scoping for dam removal projects and managing consultants. That webinar will take place on Wednesday, May 1st at noon, so please mark your calendars for that. A few housekeeping items. Note that the webinars are being recorded. Recordings and any other webinar materials will be made available on the Mass Rivers website. This session is scheduled to end at 1 p.m. We encourage you to ask questions. Please put them in the Q&A feature, which you'll see at the bottom of your screen. We're monitoring that feature, or hold your questions until the last half hour's Q&A session. Thirdly, we ask that you put your name and your affiliation in the chat. Last, we ask that you please complete the evaluation survey that will be sent to you after the webinar. And we're also going to try to put a link to it in the chat towards the end of the presentation. The evaluation is really crucial to us as it's helping us improve and possibly expand the series. And now I'm really delighted to introduce today's speaker, Christopher Houle. Chris is a senior project manager and professional water resources engineer for Ty and Bond. He leads and supports a variety of freshwater and coastal restoration efforts across Massachusetts and New England. Chris has over 18 years of restoration experience that includes roles at the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Massachusetts Division of Ecological Restoration. His involvement in dam removals while in private, state, and federal positions gives him a unique perspective on the many factors that drive project success. And with that, I will turn it over to Chris.
Thank you very much, Monica, and thank you everyone for joining today. I'm looking forward to this presentation, so I appreciate you joining here. Bear with me while I share my screen. Can somebody give me a thumbs up? All right. As Monica said, my presentation here today is about addressing infrastructure as part of your dam removal project. So you've heard from many other experts in this series about how to approach a dam removal project. But what do you do when you have a critical piece of infrastructure that can't be impacted? Spoiler alert, I'm going to give you the takeaway from my talk here. The main message is I want you to know that you should try to embrace it and make it part of your story. Talk about how your project is going to protect that piece of infrastructure and how the dam removal can provide other important community resilience benefits that might otherwise be difficult to fundraise for. It may take more time and more money to complete your project in the end than you had anticipated, but at the end of the day, you'll likely end up with an overall better result. Advancing here, one sec. There we go. So admittedly, I struggled a bit with how to present this topic, understanding that there are way more scenarios out there that I'd be able to adequately cover in a half-hour talk. Plan to talk for about 30 minutes and take about 30 minutes of questions. So I ultimately decided that sharing a story about one of the projects I had the privilege to work on over my career would be the best approach. The project is the High Street Dam removal in Bridgewater, and it's currently wrapping up construction right now. Probably like many of you, when I was assigned this project early in my dam removal career, my first reaction was, how the heck am I going to figure this project out? This one had it all from a complicated infrastructure standpoint. It initially involved a willing dam owner and a strong NGO partner, but that was about it. The biggest challenge was in relation to the 1700s era bridge that was right upstream of the dam. Not to mention the building that was precariously located between, is precariously located between the main and secondary river channels. In addition, there's a highly trafficked state bridge upstream within the dam impoundment, and a golf course that used water from the impoundment for irrigation, and that was just upstream. Downstream, you had more bridges, rail bridges, town's wastewater treatment plant that couldn't be impacted. So once again, this project had it all from an infrastructure perspective. So what I ultimately chose to do is break the project down into pieces and try to solve one issue at a time. Obviously, dam removal was the key focus from my perspective. That was easy. We had a willing dam owner, a private owner. They owned the business across the street, shown in this with the white building here. So access was well established here. We had access through the private property into the impoundment, as well as a town park and a town roadway and a parking lot nearby on east of the dam. So access, in this case, that part was easy. But as I mentioned earlier, next major piece that we needed to consider here is the bridge. Understanding that when you remove a dam, you change a pond environment to a fast-moving water river environment. So in this case, it had this bridge about 200 feet upstream, 150 feet upstream of the dam that we knew was going to be impacted by the project. And from that earlier slide, I showed 1700s era bridge, all dry laid stone, and really didn't have the town as a partner in this project yet. But thankfully, if you see in the arrow on the right, the town DPW yard was located just to the east of the dam. So I thought, hey, here's an opportunity to engage the town DPW. Of course, they would love to have their dam or their bridge, replaced as part of this project. Well, that didn't really get me too far. At least initially, their take was this bridge is fine. We haven't had any problems for years. Floods occasionally, but it's in okay shape, which they're probably right. With this sort of slow pond environment upstream, there wasn't any major issues other than flooding, occasional flooding. So that didn't get me too far, but as any probably most DPWs are, one issue that does speak volumes to them is drainage and potholes and utilities, of which there were many issues in High Street here. So that kind of changed the dynamic and changed the conversation a bit. We started to speak their language of, hey, all right, if we can address some of these drainage issues in this project, then yeah, we'd love to talk with you. So that in the early conversations with DPW really opened up the bigger conversation with the other entities at the town, like the town manager and planning department and conservation. So that was a huge breakthrough early on in the project of just really bringing in the town support, understanding this project could not have been done without a town partner. So that had that piece figured out. Now focusing on the building. Right, you have this building that's located precariously between the primary river channel to the right, and then photo, and then the secondary channel to the left, all part of the town river. And here, so this building is referred to as the Lincoln Athletic Association. It's a business that utilizes the river for recreational purposes, fishing and kayaking. You can see a dock that they have to the north of the area, but of course it's very precariously located. The building is right up along the edge of the river, and we knew from the beginning that that changing velocities of the river was going to potentially have an impact on the building. And from their perspective, they want to make sure their building is stable. They want to make sure that it's not going to wash downstream as part of this. They want to know how they're going to be able to continue to do this spring canoe fundraiser that they do. But thankfully, we had an easy way to start talking with them. Flooding was an issue that was of importance to them. This image actually came from us hanging up in their doorway. So one of my first meetings with these folks from the Lincoln Athletic Association was, I walked in, saw the photo hanging there on the wall, and started talking about flooding. And they told me some funny stories. The business also has a bar. So many of the attendees attend on Thursday, Friday nights after work. And they jokingly said that they recall many times where they'd have to go into their building and there would be water on the floor, but they just put their boots up on the bar or on the table to keep going on with their night and their fun. So that was a topic where we were able to come to common ground and really make progress with bringing them in as a partner on the project as well. So that's the message there. It's just find commonalities, find those common grounds for the issues that might be a co-benefit. Your dam removal might provide some sort of co-benefit to issues that are important to them. So with that, at that point we had a core team, and so that really then we were able to start establishing project goals and objectives for moving this project forward. And it's sort of changed, maybe flip the script from the beginning, where maybe in the beginning we focused more on those ecological things, like at the bottom of the slide, restoring the Charles River processes and improving fish passage. But really what was important to the community and some of these key stakeholders are the resiliency type aspects, improving public safety by removing and replacing aging infrastructure, reducing liability for the dam owner, reducing liability for the town, mitigating local flooding, increasing community resilience to effects of climate change, and addressing potential hazards of uncontrolled dam failure. One of my earlier slides there, I showed some of the downstream infrastructure that was critical for this project. And so you need to be thinking about how you might, if you're releasing, if sediments release, from an uncontrolled dam failure, where might those go? Would they block a bridge downstream, or would they have impact on the wastewater treatment plant that's downstream? So those issues are really important to the town, and one that I think brought some more town local support. But then another interesting aspect here was the potential improvements to recreation and honoring the site history. There's a park just to the west of the dam called Stanley Ironworks Park, which was actually the original site of Stanley Tools. So a lot of history here from the mill era. And so we were able to honor that as part of the project, but then also increase and improve some of the recreational uses as part of this. So with that, we had that sort of core team, had our goals, but how do we get the project done? And so back in 2017, I was able to initiate a drawdown of the impoundment, and you can see from some of the staining in this photo that the crest of the dam essentially, fully backwatered these culverts or bridge, High Street Bridge, at all times. So there was never really a way to do an inspection of this bridge without having divers. So I made a few phone calls at the time to colleagues over at Mass DOT, Department of Transportation, to just let them know, hey, we're thinking about this drawdown. We were going to have our engineers at the time out to do inspections, but invited them down to come and inspect it as well, because they had only been able to have divers there previously, and they took us up on that offer. They prepared their reports that really documented some of the deficiencies on this bridge. We were able to date it back to the 1700s through some research. And interestingly, I kayaked through one of these bridge barrels, and it was all just dry laid stone. You could look from one barrel into the next, and of course, from my perspective, it didn't seem like that was a safe bet. And sure enough, the DOT reports confirmed some of those issues, and that really changed the conversation in talking with the public. as well as the town officials, is that, hey, this dam removal wants to move forward. We'd love to have you as a partner, but whether or not it moves forward, this isn't a piece of aging infrastructure that the town is going to have to address eventually. And if you come on board now, you support the project now, this can be done together as part of one cohesive project. So fast forwarding, long story short, here's some photos. I'm going to go through a set of photos here from 2023, 2024. We were able to replace the bridge. So that's easiest way to replace to address that piece of infrastructure is replace it. And this bridge, I think this photo is from the fall. The bridge is now fully open to traffic, so that part was a success. A bit more focused detail of how we're addressing some of those infrastructure challenges here. So from a like abutment standpoint or bridge construction standpoint, we have concrete abutments set on concrete piles that go down about 30-40 feet to bedrock. So that compared to just the dry laid stone, much more stable foundation. We increased the size of the bridge significantly. I want to say, the total span I think was 55 feet relative to several 3 to 4 foot size culverts earlier. So much more available width to past flood flows. I think the design storm here was about a 100-year storm, and it was also sized to conform with Massachusetts stream crossing standards. And then the other piece here is the channel construction aspects. As I talked about earlier, when you have a dam removal, you're changing the environment from a pond, slow moving environment, to a natural river environment. So we had needed to dredge out some sediments as part of this project. So you had just an exposed sediment bottom. So we needed to bring back in some more appropriately sized river cobble and stone to help protect the stream bed from erosion, head cutting over time. So a few photos on that, but that again, that was a critical piece to protecting these abutments and foundations well into the future. I talked a bit about utilities. This was an interesting project from a utilities perspective, where you kind of had it all. You had water mains, sewer mains, gravity sewer mains, you had gas, overhead utilities. And the water main, for example, in the previous bridge was exposed. You'd walk down the sidewalk, you'd see it right along the bridge. So in this case, we're able to insulate it, put it under the bridge deck. Same thing with gas and sewer. Repair through the whole section of High Street for this project area. And then also one item that was important for the town manager was to do this in a way to accommodate potentially putting electric service underground in the future. So it wasn't done as part of this project, but the bridge is designed in a way to accommodate it. So there's essentially an open bay that, should the town in the future for resiliency want to put their electric service underground, they wouldn't need to tear open this bridge and kind of start over. It's all built into the design. So that was kind of a neat forward thinking from the town's perspective. Not the prettiest photo here, but I talked a bit about drainage. This was not quite finished construction, again from the winter time, but built-in stormwater improvements here to handle drainage. We eliminated pavement, created a bioretention area, improved drainage in High Street as well. I don't have a great photo of it either, but it's showing some of the safety improvements on this project here. So if I toggle back and forth on this slide, what was a kind of a critical piece to this project is that I talked about increasing the size of the bridge from just those small culverts to a span of 55 feet. And in order to do that, it was constrained by both the building, the Lincoln Athletic Association building on the west side of the river, but on the east side, you have an intersection. So what we had to do was, shift the intersection over to the east. And that gave us more space for the bridge. But what it also did was create a safer traffic condition, where if I show you this image here, you have cars that come off of Wall Street and kind kind of come into the intersection at an angle and really don't stop. It was quite unsafe to be out there where you have just people just running right through the intersection. So what we were able to do is make it more of a formal T, where there'd be stop signs at both locations, then pull some of that pavement away from the river and do some of the drainage improvements that I talked about as well. In terms of the Lincoln Athletic Association building, from the beginning was always envisioned that we needed to stabilize the building. But once got into construction, we're able discovered that the foundation of the building had quite a bit of rot and termite damage that needed to be addressed. And you can see that in the photo on the left with some of the plywood there and some of the work that they needed to do just to repair the building. So from the beginning, though, we knew we were going to need to temporarily stabilize it, which I've shown with the arrows pointing to the steel frame. But ultimately what this allowed us to do was create the abutment for the bridge, tie that into the foundation for the building to provide some more additional stabilization for the building foundation, and then tie that in with the wall that is along the river, which I'll show you in a minute too. So the building is in a much better, safer condition than it was prior to this project as a result of the project. So looking at the building from the outside here, you have with the arrow, I'm pointing out the original stone wall. So essentially the edge of the river prior to the project. We were able to shift the river over several feet with the construction of a new revetment. So essentially didn't touch the old revetment, just built out from that. So that helps protect the building. But then going back to the earlier conversation with the bridge wall, is this ties in, the wall that you're seeing in the photo ties into the foundation for the building, as well as the new wall on the river. So this was an interesting piece to it. Otherwise, you would have, in most cases, you would have had a wing wall coming off, but that wing wall would have actually prevented access into the building. So the engineers doing the bridge design actually came up with a very unique kind of 90-degree design here that, well, again, tied into the building foundation, which required quite a bit of extra approval with Mass DOT, but was really the only option to do here in order to make this project work. And I think ultimately it was a pretty creative design. Just another photo of the wall and then the river before it was put online. You see some of that riffle construction, channel construction that I talked about earlier. Here's a photo with the river online. I was lucky enough to get out here the day that the cofferdams were pulled. So I got to see the river flowing freely for the first time in January. So that was fun. And of course we did a dam removal, right? I spent all this time talking about this. We did remove the dam. A photo on the left in the corner is just a pre-dam condition. Dam was out last summer. And then this was the river flowing freely in January. And the last piece on this project is, kind of a fun aspect to it was increasing recreation and public uses and honoring some of that site history. So here is a portion of land actually was actually privately owned from the dam owner. They had a small sliver of land on the west side of the river that they had for access to maintain the dam. So they actually agreed to donate that to the town, make it, expand the town park. And then we had proposed this river access point for a kayak launch and canoe launch, which did not exist at the site prior. And to build it, we actually reused some of the 1700s era cut stones that were used to build the original bridge after pulling those out of the dam. So that was kind of fun and a good way to honor the site history. So in recap here, timeline of the project lasted about 8 years, starting in earnest in 2016, wrapping up this year. Began as just a private dam owner wanting to remove their dam, but ended as a public infrastructure improvement and resiliency project. We focused on the infrastructure complexities to expand the partnership and gain broader public support for the project, and really focused on those technical challenges became the opportunities to attract other broader support and funding for the project. this is just I know I have not listed everybody here, but highlighting a few of the partners and funding support here. That White House, was a huge supporter for this. That Department of Interior, Secretary of the Department of Interior actually came to the site, had received funding through several of the recent laws and acts, infrastructure acts, strong support from federal agencies, Nature Conservancy, of course, and other local NGOs, and a variety of state agencies, including DER, MVP, EEA, and of course the town of Bridgewater. So the point here on the slide is when it became this bigger effort, lot more support from a funding perspective and a partnership standpoint. So I think with that example, I covered a lot of scenarios, but probably not all of them. So for example, what do you do if your dam actually is a major roadway or utility corridor in the town? What do you do if you have historic structures that can't be impacted or changed as part of the project? What do you do if you have a waterfront property, residential properties that want their maintain access to the river, keep their boating and fishing access? Or what if the impoundment is used for water supply or for fire suppression or other irrigation purposes? Well, I have a few examples to run through to try to touch on these examples, but my take-home message here is at that project scoping phase, you really want to be thorough with your early site reconnaissance. So zoom out, take a 10,000-foot view of your project area. Consider your watershed, consider the site in the context of the watershed and the historical context of the site. What purpose did this dam serve for not only currently, but in the past when it was originally built? How did that fit in the context of the industrial context of the site in the area? Investigate the upstream and downstream infrastructure. We covered that pretty well in the other example, but understand those existing impoundment uses. Confirm site ownership. That's a really critical piece. Is you might have a great idea and a great project, but if you need to access private property and they're not on board, you need to think about how to engage, or you want to engage them early and think about alternatives if you can't access the site in the way that you might envision. And then along the site access lines is, a lot of these dams are walled in rivers that have, and dams that have been here for hundreds of years. So you need to think about how you're actually going to get your machinery down in the river to do the project. And then lastly, I'm not going to cover sediment management too much because it is another presentation later in the series, but you do want to characterize and predict how sediment might move as a result of your project. Will it move downstream and potentially reduce flow capacity to a downstream bridge, or will it move downstream and settle out in a marina or some other piece infrastructure or facility that you really can't afford to have those sort of negative impacts? So I'd take home message there again is you want to forecast those undesired outcomes and understand the risks that those might bring, but recognize those as potential opportunities and co-benefits for the project. So just a few quick examples here before I wrap up. This is a dam removal site out in Pittsfield. Similar to the previous example, we had bridges upstream, rail bridges, we had public roadways. At the upstream bridge, there was a water main that actually ran through buried through the river that needed to be protected and could not be moved. Of course, had the mill building nearby, additional sewer main downstream. And this project wrapped up in 2020. So just a few snapshots on how we address some issues here. One of the rail bridges, able to really fortify the pilings here. In this case, the pilings for this bridge were set in that sort of slow water moving environment. So we needed to expand those and really strengthen those with the higher river velocity. So created that concrete columns around those pillars. Excuse me. And then the photo on the left is looking downstream from that upstream bridge. So built a constructed riffle to essentially backwater uh, the the bridge, and then the utility water main that was running in the river to kind of mimic some of those low energy environments that the dam was providing. And then lastly, the dam itself was supporting structurally the mill building to some extent, as well as the parking lot and wall that were next to it. So where you see that white concrete, that was where the dam was. So created a structural engineer designed essentially a buttress wall to help support the infrastructure that was above that location. Impoundment uses, I covered this in some of the earlier slides as well, but dry hydrants, fire suppression needs. This is a photo from a site in Dracut where the town has a very well-defined location here where the fire department comes regularly. That's turnout is specifically for fire trucks. They pump water to fill their fire trucks on a regular basis. So a key thing that could not be changed in this project. This is still an ongoing project, but again, this is a really common issue in Western Mass towns. So you really want to be thinking about, if you are removing a dam and you're removing it a way that a town may get fire suppression, you need to think about a backup source or where that water may come from. Similarly, in terms of upstream impacts, in this case, this is a site in Hardwick, Mass, the village of Wheelwright. The village water supply well is very close to the impoundment, and we were fairly certain that with the dam removal would lower water levels and potentially impact their ability to pump water and provide water to their residents. So that had to be a key focused study area for this project. Similarly, there was a gravel washing facility upstream that pumped the water from the river to essentially run their business, and removing the dam and not addressing it would put them out of business. So same thing, bring these entities into the conversation early when you have issues or factors that are going to negatively impact these upstream users. And lastly, downstream impacts. We talked about some of the bridge related things, but just zoom way out. What is this? What is downstream? In this case, Wachusett Reservoir, water supply for Boston and Boston suburbs. Sediment releases in this case could and would impact on water quality, which could have a huge impact for water supply. So just want to be thinking about your site relative to the broader watershed context. Site access, I think a similar photo was shared in a next presentation last month, but I love this photo. And this is again Walden River. Never in my mind this is how I envisioned this access happening, but it's a great example where what can you do? The only way to get in the river is to get a crane, build a cofferdam around the dam, put the machine right in the middle. So you want to be thinking about this, particularly in these settings, these urban settings with Walden rivers. And I think that's my last slide here. It's a fun one. Here, the photo on the top is the dam is actually under the building. You can see the dam being removed in the bottom picture, but what easier way to address the infrastructure? Just remove it all, right? Not really possible in a lot of projects, but very creative solution here. So with that, I just take home message is don't let perception of difficulty discourage project progress. Seek guidance from others, whether it's hiring or talking to an engineer, or just talking to people that have maybe been through a similar scenario. There's a lot of experts that are doing talks in this series, so reach out to anyone to seek kind of see how they dealt with their issues on their project. You want to identify and highlight those community benefits. That's just a great way to get public support for your project is really engaging the community and making it their project in addition to your project. So, and then turn those challenges into opportunities. Just because there's something a difficult piece of infrastructure doesn't mean it's impossible. There's usually a way to engineer a solution, and at the end of the day, you might have a better story and be able to engage more stakeholders and partners. So with that, I want to thank you and open it up for questions. Enjoyed this talk and enjoyed being part of this Dam Busters 101. It's a great series. So thank you, Mass Rivers, for putting it on. And lastly, I'll just give photo credit to T Ford Company on this one. This is a dam out in Scituate that they constructed a few years back. So thank you.
Okay. That was great. Thank you so much, Chris. I mean, it was wonderful to see all those examples. And for those of you who have been attending one Dam Busters webinar after another, I'm sure you're starting to be able to identify some themes here about sticking with it and community engagement and, making sure you cover details as well as you can well in advance. I'm going to sort of do the MC the Q&A session here, and we've got a couple in the chat and one in the actual Q&A feature. So Danielle has 3 questions, but I'm going to lump 2 of them together. So the first is, what was the most technically challenging infrastructure challenge that you ran into or have run into?
Sure, it's a good one. The most technically challenging. I would say each one is unique, so it's a hard question. I mean, the reason I lifted up that High Street example is that one was, pretty, like I said, early on in my dam removal career. Looking at it, kind of had it all. So I, as a whole, I just thought, wow, I don't. At the time, I didn't know how I was going to do it. And to be fair, I wasn't just me. There was a lot of partners that involved in that project, and my involvement largely ceased after 2022. So, what you really want to be doing there is is working with your partner team, increasing that project team to be able to tackle it together, not just by yourself. And that's a perfect example of it. And because no one is an expert in all these things. And everybody, each stakeholder, each partner is going to bring something different to the table to be able to help find the way through the challenge. So that's kind of why I lifted that one up. Each one is unique in its own way. So.
Okay, well, actually, that's a good segue to her other 2 questions. What were the project's most beneficial partnerships, and how was stakeholder engagement managed? And are there challenges and success stories associated with that stakeholder engagement?
Well, stakeholder engagement, of course, is critically important on these projects, especially these large projects where they don't happen without a broad range of partners. So I don't want to say I don't know if I have an answer of like how was it managed. It's part of the process that you incrementally advance as your project goes along. Public meetings are a great way to inform the public and maybe get other stakeholders involved through that. It might be difficult to identify every owner that you might have in an impoundment. But if you do a public meeting, you try to notify everybody, and then you see who comes out, and you see, you hear what the issues are. You hear is in support, who maybe isn't in support, or you can hear kind of what their concerns are, and you can build their feedback from those meetings into the next meeting or into the next level of design. Or I'd say every public meeting I've ever been a part of, I've learned something new that I didn't know going into it, and which really helped shape the direction of the project. It's usually always a positive. So that was the second part of the question. What was the first part again of the question?
Well, it was about the project's most beneficial partnerships.
The most beneficial? I'd say every partnership is beneficial. In the example I gave you with High Street, that project would not have happened without the town in being involved or engaged, because obviously addressing their infrastructure, but they were also the entity that was willing to put the project out to bid and be the construction owner. Where, if you flip the script a bit, if it was, again, it started as a private dam owner wanting to remove their dam, but there's no way that entity, the private entity, could have been a contract owner to build a new bridge or do all the utility work. It just wouldn't have happened. So in that instance, the town agreed to take this risk on to do this private dam removal as part of their bigger effort. So that one was that in that case it was critically important to have that town partnership, but that's not to downplay the other partnerships as well. I mean, every partner on that slide played a very important role and helped get the project advanced. So everyone is important in their own way.
Great, thank you. So I have a couple of people asking about the amount of funding required for the High Street project. What was the total cost of the project, including the culvert, the bridge replacement, and did Mass DOT contribute to the project?
I knew somebody was going to ask that question, and unfortunately, I don't have the answer. But I bet somebody from Mass DER does have the answer. My involvement largely ceased after midway through in 2022. But the cost estimates around that time were around the $6 million range, and I think it probably came in a little bit higher than that, maybe the 6 to 8 million. Maybe in the chat if anyone from DER can weigh in. But I think that's about it. Let's call it 8 million at the end of the day. And in terms of DOT's involvement, they weren't, critically involved as a partner, I would say, but they were engaged at that initial level to come out and do that inspection, which was really helpful to build that town and public support around it. They were involved kind of regulatorily through the Chapter 85 process. Being a 55-foot span bridge, you need approvals through DOT and everything. So they were involved at that level as well.
And do you happen to know, Chris, if bidding was restricted to contractors that were Mass DOT pre-qualified bridge contractors for the bridge?
I believe they were. There's different categories, and I don't know which category, but yeah, they would have had to be pre-qualified contractors for DOT, particularly in relation to the size of the bridge and everything.
Okay. The next one is from Jennifer, who had to drop off, but she's going to listen to the recording. Was the Mill Street Dam removal in Pittsfield permitted as an ecological restoration project under the Mass WPA regs?
That's the depths of my memories here. Come on. I think no. The answer to that question is no, it was not. And the reason being is, which actually there's a proposed Mass DEP regulation change to address this issue, but technically to qualify as an ecological restoration project, currently you need to have your 401 water quality certificate in hand, and in that instance, we had it applied for it but had not received it yet, so we could not. So we were essentially a limited project, which is very similar, but not exactly the same.
Great. And actually, we had somebody answer the total cost of the High Street project was about 8.5 million. So you were not that far off.
Good. Thank you. And thank you for whoever answered that. I can't see the chat at the moment.
Okay. We have somebody asking, could you please talk about the challenges regarding the conversations about cost versus benefits for this project?
I think that question is in relation to, well, I often get that question in relation to saying, like, trying to receive money through FEMA or MEMA, where you need to provide a benefit cost analysis. So essentially show that the benefits of the project are greater than, from a dollar value, than the costs. And that was an analysis that we did not go through, at least thoroughly for this project, because we did not have FEMA funding or actually attempt to seek FEMA funding for that project, at least all the way through the process anyway. It started it. But in terms of, just maybe more generally answering that question is do the benefits outweigh the costs? In my opinion, yeah. I mean, I think the costs were high, of course, at 8.5 million, but you have a lot of all this infrastructure addressed. The risk of the dam failure has been addressed for, if you put dollar values to the potential impacts of like their wastewater treatment facility, for example, if that dam had failed and washed away part of that facility, that would be, significant. So I don't have any sort of monetary numbers to give you on the benefit side, but conceptually, I think it was a huge selling point for the project, locally anyways.
Great, thank you. I'm going to note for everybody that our next presentation is on project scoping and managing consultants, which I know you've referred to through your presentation, Chris. The question I have for you is, what happens when you run into something that is outside the project scope? And I don't know whether some of the things you ran across in High Street were outside the original project scope. We've had, I think, at least one presenter talk about like the surprise dam that existed underneath another dam. So if you could discuss a little bit how you cope with that kind of situation.
Just to clarify, do you mean like at the construction level or at the consultant level, or just maybe even at the very beginning, just when, it's first, the project's just first conceptualized?
I was thinking more at the construction level.
At the construction level?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely challenging. If you fundraise around something, you often don't have a lot of extra money on these projects. If you might have your 10% contingency going into construction, but you need real cost estimates to fundraise around, and it's hard to just get a big contingency put onto those grant costs, because these grants are funding a lot of projects. So yeah, when you encounter things like a bonus dam, for example, that they can be a real challenge. We didn't, to my knowledge anyways, I don't think there were um anything that was sort of too unexpected for the High Street project. Maybe some others from DER can weigh in on that. So thankfully, but it does happen, and I think maybe the Mill Street, the Huddersfield example is a good one where, although the project scope didn't necessarily change as part of that, the amount of the cost for sediment removal, the volume of sediment removal on that project did far exceed the initial thought, and happened sort of midstream through construction. And the way we got at that is just by having a broad stakeholder and partner group, where we able to bring everybody to the table and lean on those partnerships and say, hey, we're in construction, we need your help, we need your support. And thankfully everybody was really stepped up and provided enough funding, so we didn't leave the city, for example, in that case, with holding the bag on to finish this project that they were sort of took on as their own, even though it wasn't city-owned dams in that case. So yeah, that just speaks to the importance of having that broad partnership, and establishing that partnership early, and maintaining it too. That's a really important piece too. It's one thing just to put somebody's logo onto a slide, but it's another thing to really make them feel part of the team and engaged, and let them weigh in through the process. And that's something that I try to do. And I highly recommend that anyone here on as a practitioner really provides that sort of level of maintenance to those partnerships, because they're relationships at the end of the day.
Thank you. I think we have covered the questions that are in the Q&A and in the chat. Robert, do you have any questions to offer for Chris?
No, I just want to say thanks, Chris. Great presentation.
Thanks, Rob. Thank you again. Thank you for
Yeah.
the invite to talk today. This has been a lot of fun, and it was fun preparing it.
Yeah, I want to really thank you, Chris, for getting all of this together. And it's a topic that I've gotten a lot of questions about already from webinar participants. So I'm really glad you were the first to dig into it for everyone. And I want to remind everybody that we'll be sending out a link to an evaluation. And this is exactly why the evaluation is really helpful, because we are having respondents tell us what kinds of follow-on webinars they would like. And actually, Anna just put the survey link in the chat for those of you who want to go to it right away, which would be really helpful. But we are getting great ideas out of all of the survey respondents as we try to flesh out the series beyond what we already have planned. So I want to thank everybody for attending today. And of course, very special thanks to Chris for putting all of this awesome information together for us. And please mark your calendars for the next iteration of Dam Busters on Wednesday, May 1st at noon. Thank you, everyone. Bye.